you're going to have to change the way in which you perceive travel, for the foreseeable future. We're all going to be wearing these masks, and it's not something that's going to disappear very quickly.
It's passport, it's proof, brackets of vaccination, and PCR.
When is the best time to book?
Now.
Now.
Because we know there's pent-up demand. People are putting hope in their travel calendar for the year ahead.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Marissa Lennox.
Welcome to the Zoomer. I'm Marissa Lennox, and a big welcome to our live remote audience joining us today. It's great to see your faces. Now, as with previous crises of similar scale, COVID-19 will reshape the world in lasting ways. How we travel is no exception. Although the vaccine has lit the path to recovery, the travel and tourism industry has had to pivot in a big way. On today's show, we look at key changes from the future of air travel to more sustainable models of tourism, plus everything you need to know before booking that next trip. But before we dive in, let's tee up the topic.
Canadians are dreaming again of beaches, mountains, and monuments after more than a year of closed borders and halted air travel. According to one report, domestic flights surged 108% from May to June this summer, while international bookings climbed 141% over the same period. Fall trips are also on the rise, despite Delta variant concerns. As for what's driving the upward trend, Canadians say reconnection travel, revitalization travel, and revenge travel are their top reasons. Meanwhile, over 70% plan to incorporate physical activities in their upcoming trip, and 40% hope to prioritize rest. As for the future of travel itself, all indicators point to
Joining me now is John Grabek, McGill Global Aviation Professor and former Air Canada executive. John, it's so great to have you here. The most significant change in air travel today was announced just recently by the federal government that all air travelers boarding a plane in Canada must provide proof of full vaccination. Let's start there with your reaction.
Well, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we would get to this point. I think that the world really is waiting for vaccinations to hit a critical mass. I think that we're talking 75, 85, 90% vaccination rates, that somehow, some way that'll reach, that'll allow people to start socializing, it'll start people to feel more comfortable in gatherings. And that translates to people on airplanes and in airports.
Do the airplanes and airports want it? Do the airlines rather and airports want it?
Well, I think that, it depends what country you're talking to. You talk to the Canadian carriers, and the Canadian carriers, for the most part, welcome it, because I think they want to see practices put in place that are that reduce the fear of people flying. And I think that, they've made a very good point from the start of the pandemic that the actual environment on board an airplane and all of the filters that they have on board the airplane, really are protecting those passengers from transmission of the virus. But there's always a question of, what does the traveling public bring along with them that could further the spread of the virus and community transmission at the destination? And I think that's where the Canadian government and a number of other governments around the world have said, double vaccination will not only improve the quality of travel in the airplane at the airport, but also protect the population at their destination.
Now, it's clear people are hitting the skies again. I think there's that sort of pent-up demand, this desire to travel, but there's also that concern about whether or not it's safe, irregardless of whether you're vaccinated. I know that I personally have spoken to people who are double vaxxed and still have concerns about air travel. So how have airlines pivoted to make it safer? What have they put in place to make it a safer environment for their customers?
Well, if you look at air travel a couple of years ago in the fall of 2019, and you benchmark that against what's happening today in terms of the practices the airports and the airlines have put in place in the fall of 2021, it is a vastly different world. You talk about going through an airport now, and it's for the most part, a touchless experience. Don't touch anything. You basically walk in there and you basically manage your way through the airport environment, not touching anything. And you have sanitation, you have towelettes, you have all kinds of stuff in place that basically say, I will not be in a situation where I will compromise my health because I'm touching things. And you sit back and you say, okay, and you go on board an airplane, and the cleanliness on board the airplane, the hygiene aboard the airplane, compared to what it was 2 years ago or plus, is vastly different. They basically sanitize the airplane. They go through an inordinate amount of work to basically clean up the airplane so that when you get on an airplane, there's very little residual hygienic issues associated from the previous trip. So it's very different and it's much more hygienic.
Even before COVID, I think the romance of travel was starting to wane insofar as, travel can be stressful. And you mentioned a contactless environment. I think there are a lot of people that would feel overwhelmed by that. I mean, on top of that, you've got long lines at airports, and now you add in all of the COVID protocols that people require in order to just, get through security and customs if they're traveling internationally. So, I think the future of travel and air travel will depend on more than just travelers' pent-up demand. I think airports and airlines will have to make changes in the way that they do things to make it a better experience. Do you think that we will ever get back to the old days of travel when it was leisurely?
I think that, the world has changed. It has changed significantly since March of 2020. And I liken it back to the days, prior to 9/11. I used to fly prior to 9/11, and I basically show up at the airport 15 minutes before departure and get on an airplane. 9/11 changed that fundamentally in terms of all of the screening and all of the protocols that we have for security. Same thing is going to happen with the pandemic. We will, in fact, be much more conscious about the environment in which we fly, in which we operate through an airport. And, for the foreseeable future, we're all going to be wearing these masks. And it's not something that's going to disappear very quickly. People will be looking at masks as being part of the environment. And so you're going to have to change the way in which you perceive travel and in the way in which you experience travel. With the vaccination passports that we're going to be requiring as of October 30th or November 30th, depending on the date that you look at, that's going to add time to travel. So you're going to have to show up at the airport, a good few hours, 2-3 hours before your flight to basically go through all the protocols associated with, checking vaccination passports and going through security and doing all that. And that's not going to go away.
I'd like you to touch on just ever so briefly, I've seen some of the headlines that say the future of air travel is high tech. But what are some of the other technologies that are being deployed now in travel?
You're seeing a phenomenal number of new ways to go about, checking and making your trip as contactless as possible. And I think that's the key word, in the future of travel is going to be don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Keep your mask on and as often and as long as you can, except when you're eating or drinking. But, even then, you're going to be asked to basically eat before you get on an airplane. Don't eat on an airplane. And if you're going to drink on an airplane, make it quick. And so there are technologies that are going to be showing up both at the airport where you'll have biometrics, where you don't have to do anything in terms of taking any of your information out. You basically have things like retinal scans, you have fingerprints, you have a number of other, biometrically designed technologies that will identify you and only you as being able to, in fact, get on an airplane. So whether it's at check-in to check your bags, whether it's at the gate, when they now look at your passport or look at your driver's license to get on an airplane, that's not going to happen. You're basically going to be looking at biometric data being the one qualifier that confirms you are who you are, and you've got all of the data that supports your legitimacy to travel in that biometric scan.
Fascinating stuff. All right, John, thank you. We need to take a short break. We'll be right back with more of the Zoomer.
In Florida alone, Canadians spend about $3.5 billion a season, so not even over a year. So if you think about 2 winters and maybe 3, depending on how people still feel about traveling to places like Florida, it is a massive loss.
Welcome back. It isn't too soon to start thinking about the upcoming holiday travel season. In fact, some predict it'll be as busy as ever. Here to share the latest travel updates, plus their tips and recommendations for better travel, is Vivian Vassos, executive editor and resident travel specialist at Zoomer Magazine and everythingzoomer.com, and Ron Lonsdale, vice president of Collette Tours Canada. Great to have you both in studio.
Thank you, Marissa.
Ron, I wanted to start with you because, as I mentioned, people are thinking about holiday travel for the first time perhaps in 2 years. So my question is, when is the best time to book?
Now.
Now.
Because we know there's pent-up demand. People are putting hope in their travel calendar for the year ahead with all the exciting news and vaccine certificates and passports and bordering opening up, and the airlines are making it more accommodating, more efficient to travel. And I think people have lost 18 months of travel. So right now, capacity, if you look at it, because the U.S. they've started to travel before us. And so if you're looking at going to your favorite spot or your favorite destination, space is going to be at a low capacity, so you got to take advantage of it now.
How about traveling on the holiday itself?
Oh, like we're talking Christmas?
Yeah, if you travel on Christmas, are the flights cheaper? Are there some benefits to that?
No, you're going to be paying a premium because of the demand to travel at that particular time, because as you know, there's only so much holiday time people get, and it's generally in and around the holidays. So
good point.
This is where you're doing your homework and your research, but I would definitely reach out to your travel advisor and start having that conversation.
Now, Vivian, the federal government is still recommending against non-essential travel, but still people are planning for the future. I think we have to remember, though, that despite vaccination rates being what they are, COVID is still very much a factor. So what do people need to remember in that environment?
Well, I agree. I think that it's still very fluid. And to Ron's point, booking now is really important. One of the things that's been happening during this time is a shorter window. So what you need to know is you have a team. Get that team working. So whether it's a travel advisor working with a group travel, those are really important things because they can answer a lot of your questions because things change every day. Today there was another travel announcement from the government. So every day things change, and it's so key, even knowing where you're going. So working with your hotel, use your team. The concierge is part of your team. The front desk is part of your team. So before you go, these guys are actually answering phones again. That's another great thing about what's happened is the silver lining. People are picking up the phone. So you can call the hotel and ask the questions, call your travel agent or advisor. It's just so important to have a team behind you no matter how you go.
Vivian mentioned fluidity, and oh God, is it ever fluid? I mean, it feels like it has been for the last 2 years, but one of the latest announcements, of course, is that the land border is reopening between Canada and the United States, and there's so much that's involved with that. Will we require testing? I guess you don't even need testing to cross the land border at this point.
You don't. So we're always asking for more clarity, and more announcements are to come from our government. But as we know that if you're driving across the land border, you're not required any type of testing. But we don't know of what's going to be required to return home. So as you know, when you fly to the United States, you're required an antigen rapid test, as we talked about, Vivian, but coming home, you're required a PCR test. So again, these things constantly change, and we'll be providing more clarity in the coming weeks.
It's actually amazing to consider the loss from an economic perspective of having that land border closed when it comes to, many snowbirds didn't travel south last year, and they'll be traveling for the first time this year, Vivian.
Absolutely, a massive loss. So the U.S. government says that in Florida alone, Canadians spend about $3.5 billion a season, so not even over a year. So if you think about 2 winters and maybe 3, depending on how people still feel about traveling to places like Florida, it is a massive loss and an investment. I mean, our time and how we invest in the United States, for example.
So what is your checklist for everyone who's watching today who's thinking about booking a trip? What do they need to know and to do in advance?
Well, aside from talking to a travel agent or an advisor, I have a list. I call it the 3 Ps. So it's passport, it's proof, brackets of vaccination, and PCR. So your proof of your test. So passport, proof, PCR, your tests. And if you're armed with those things, even printouts, you don't need a smartphone. If you can get it printed out, if you can ask your travel advisor to print the documents for you, or get your kids to do it if you don't have a printer at home, it really makes sense to be armed with that. But the other P is patience. Patience, patience, patience. Everything is going to take longer because as Canadians, I think also we have this idea of respect and respecting space and physical distance. We want to be social. So patience is key. So you do have to add an hour to the airport. You may have to add an hour to your drive over the border. And know that waiting for those tests is nerve-wracking, but also patient. Because if you're not armed with all your information, you can't go.
Now, Ron, you've been to over 60 countries, which is impressive. It's quite impressive. Where would you like to return in 2022?
I would definitely want to revisit Ireland, Spain. I know we work with the tourism board partners, but we've really improved the customer experience, more of a cultural connection. And when it comes to culinary immersions and, there's places that in Spain, that the Basque region that I've never even been to, that I hear about these cider houses with the grilled meats and tapas. And then we have a new foodie tour in Galway. So it's like, man, I got to get back there.
Yeah. And Vivian, same question to you. You've traveled all over the place. So is there one destination, two, three, couple destinations in particular you are looking forward to revisiting again for the first time in a couple of years?
Well, I think digging deeper into the places that you love and that you are, for me anyway, that I'm familiar with, I think a lot of travelers will feel that way. Okay, I already know that destination. Maybe that'll make me feel more comfortable about going again. And also places that special things are happening. So for me next year, I really am looking forward to the Floriade in Holland, if you're a gardener or a horticultural fan. And I'll be traveling with Collette on that, and it's going to be amazing. It's something that only happens every 10 years. I think those special places in your friends, family, those wide open spaces are the places that I'm looking for. London, of course, the UK, it is the Queen's Jubilee again next year. The Commonwealth Games are happening in the UK. So of course, the foodie destinations, always Italy, Spain.
Got it, definitely.
There's so many to talk about too. And just, again, friends and family, reuniting with them in those wide open spaces, I think.
Well, and I'm a bit of a foodie myself, so I agree with you there. All right, great advice, you guys. Thanks for being here. When we come back, 2 of the top destinations to add to your travel list for 2022. We'll tell you about it next.
Dublin is a really old, ancient city. It's a Viking historic city. It has so much to see and do. It's surrounded by the Irish Sea and the mountains, so you can enjoy that city experience, music, dancing, and then you can also go on a hike the next day or go kayaking.
Well, the pandemic brought the global tourism industry to its knees last year. The rollout of vaccines against COVID-19 has given government officials in many countries, including Spain and Ireland, new confidence to welcome visitors again. Joining me now is Sandra Moffatt with Tourism Ireland and Barbara Maria Couto with Tourism Spain. Welcome to the program, ladies. Sandra, let me start with you. Is Ireland open for non-essential travel to Canadians? And what are the restrictions that are currently in place?
We've been open since July 19th for fully vaccinated travelers. So if you are fully vaccinated, there's no travel-related quarantines, no testing requirements whatsoever. If you're traveling with children between the ages of 12 and 17, they need a negative PCR test. But that's about it. Ireland is, really safe and open at the moment. We were actually just voted by Bloomberg COVID compliance ranker as the #1 destination to travel to post-COVID. That's measured by the social and economic impact. And Canada's also doing really well at number 14. So I feel like it's a natural fit for travel between Canada and Ireland right now.
Definitely. And they say when you go to Ireland, you long to come back. Now, Barbara, sort of same question to you. Are you guys open for Canadians? What are the restrictions, the COVID restrictions in place?
Yes, Spain are open to Canadians. Canadians can visit Spain, and the only requirement is to fill in a health control form. For the restrictions, the situation now is quite good. The number of cases is quite low in Spain, and the vaccination rate is very high. So there is no restrictions to mobility. You can find some restrictions to capacity in some regions. And of course, you will have to wear a mask and keep social distancing.
Do you need to be vaccinated to enter Spain? No?
You don't need to be vaccinated, no, because Canada is in the safe list.
That's the key with travel right now, is you need to know what the different restrictions and rules are in many of the countries, and I'm sure you guys deal with that a lot.
I can't keep up with it. Sometimes it's like the Wild West for travel entry requirements. So what we've done on our website is the Traveling Well experience. It's a landing page. We have a referred partnership with CIBT. So it just, the country you're from, the passport you hold, and the destination you're going, and it's updated daily so that it provides, the needed information for the guests to know before going.
Sandra, let me ask you then, sell Ireland to us. What are the top destinations that you would recommend we visit when we come?
For me, it's number one, Dublin. Now, I'm a little biased because I'm from there. It's my hometown, but Dublin is a really old, ancient city. It's a Viking historic city. It has so much to see and do. It's surrounded by the Irish Sea and the mountains, so you can enjoy that city experience, music, dancing, and then you can also go on a hike the next day or go kayaking, down our River Liffey under our famous Halfpenny Bridge. There's just so much to see and do there. So that would be my number one top spot. I'm also a big fan of Northern Ireland. It's incredible. There's a stunning drive that you can go right up from Dublin City north along the Causeway Coastal Route is what it's known as. You can go through the capital city of Belfast, all along the coast, and then end up in Derry, Londonderry. Derry is known as the Walled City. It has ancient city walls over 400 years old. It's the home of Halloween as well, really topical right now. Halloween's just around the corner. That has one of the best Halloween festivals in the world. It's also a home of contemporary history. It has a lot of murals and artwork in the city. They were made by local artists. They're political statements, but known as the People's Gallery. So you can really get a sense and feel of the city there.
Just going back to your home of Halloween comment, so Halloween originated in Ireland, is that true?
It did indeed. 3,000 years ago, it was the Festival of Samhain. And a lot of the traditions that we have here in Canada now, like carving pumpkins, actually originated in Ireland, where we used to carve turnips. And when we emigrated, we couldn't find turnips, so we just started using pumpkins instead.
I love it. That's so cool. Barbara, Spain is a place that continues to surprise me. It's not just sunbathing and shopping. There's so much to do in Spain. What are your top destinations?
The Way of St. James, because this year is a Jacobeo year or Holy Year. And this is a pilgrimage route that leads to Santiago de Compostela in Galicia. And it goes through northern Spain. And then another recommendation for now and always is Andalusia. It's always a great option. It's very well known because it's where flamenco was born. And also it has an impressive Islamic art heritage that you can enjoy in cities like Granada, Sevilla, or Cordoba that are also very walkable cities. And then it's weird to recommend a big city these days, but I'm gonna recommend Barcelona because even if it's a big city, they have developed an app with it, Check Barcelona, where you can actually verify real time how many people are in a touristic space. Barcelona have an incredible cultural agenda, and it's a great place for architecture lovers. You can discover their modernism with the buildings created by Gaudi.
The thing about tourism that I find so fascinating is, a lot of these tourist destinations, Vivian, have really had an opportunity for a reboot. So with the drop in tourism, maybe they're rethinking the type of tourists that they want to attract, or maybe how they do tourism. Have you found a lot of that?
Yeah, it's great collaboration within our industry. So travel is going to be more meaningful, purposeful. We say travel is a true educator. It's one of the very few things that you can buy that makes you richer. And they're showcasing their countries, their destinations. And the one thing is we're very fortunate is that we do multi-day guided vacations both in Spain and Ireland, and they've been both top destination for Canadians.
Well, and Vivian, the other thing is, I think previously, before COVID, when people would book trips, it was sort of about affordability and bragging rights. And today it looks much different. People are looking for for opportunities to be stewards of the earth. So for more sustainable travel options, how significant will that be going forward?
I think it is very significant. I do think people really care about how they go now. If you think about what could potentially be lost because we weren't traveling, even to places like where you can see the gorillas in Africa and not having that income and losing that ability to take care of those animals is brutal and just devastating. So we really help when we go to places like that. I think the other thing is taking a destination like Spain, for example. There's the pilgrimage, there's the way of the Camino, the way of St. James, but now the pilgrimage is also about food and drink and enriching yourself and that experience and bringing that experience home. So it's health, it's happiness, and also thinking about, and again, with Ireland as well, wide open spaces, friends and family, again, bringing it back to teaching the next generation how you can travel a little lighter, a little more softly, but still experience those things that have meaning and bring it back home with you.
All right, all great insights. We'll be right back with more of the Zoomer.
Buy now, buy as soon as you possibly can when you're thinking about going and traveling. Travel insurance premiums do change just like inflation changes.
Welcome back. Now more than ever, travelers really need to be aware of what it is they're buying when it comes to travel insurance. Umesh Manani, travel insurance partner for the McLennan Group, joins me now to discuss why travel insurance is a must and how to book. Umesh, it's great to see you. The thing about travel insurance is it's a get it and forget it type of thing. Someone said that to me once, and I like it because they think if I have a MasterCard, therefore I must have travel insurance. But as you know, the biggest reason why claims are often denied is because the person doesn't know what he or she bought. So if there is one silver lining that's come from COVID, certainly at least in the insurance industry space, it's that people are paying attention to what it is they're buying and really trying to understand those limitations. So why don't we start there? What should someone be looking for when shopping for travel insurance?
Yeah, it is definitely something that is important, especially more so now than ever before. I like to use the analogy of like buying a car. What do you do when you purchase a car? You don't just look at one and be like, oh yeah, that's the one I want, and you buy it. You go around and you shop around. Every provider has different benefits, different things that will be beneficial for you particularly. But more so when it comes to your health profile, there might be some insurances out there that cover health conditions that may not be covered elsewhere. So I think the biggest advice that I can give to anybody purchasing travel insurance is really finding a policy that fits not just your health profile, but any other benefit that you might think you have, i.e. trip cancellation, trip interruption. All of these things have to be considered, especially in the climate that we're in today. Compare those benefits against, that cheaper one. Oh, they offered me that 31 on the website. Let me see what that one's all about. Really take a look at what benefits are offered and make an informed decision. Now,
if someone's planning a trip, when is the best time to purchase that insurance?
Buy now, buy as soon as you possibly can. When you're thinking about going and traveling, travel insurance premiums do change just like inflation changes. So I would say buy it as soon as possible, buy it with enough time to really read it. I know nobody likes to read that fine print in the book. I'm just like that as well. I don't want to read it, but since being in this industry, that's the first place I go. So I would definitely recommend as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute. You see this so often that people just are like, oh yeah, it was an afterthought. No, it should be part of that planning process as you go through your travel plans.
Is it a must-have, especially if you're going to the US, for example?
Absolutely. If I could use any word, the word is absolutely. You mentioned it and you said it very well. The implications of getting healthcare treatment in the US could be financially devastating. I've seen incredible bills, to say the least, for very minor things. The US, their health system is a lot different than what we find here in Canada, and they're able to charge us really anything they want. And you don't want to have that burden, especially when you're going and your purpose of trip is to go and relax. You want to have that peace of mind, especially in the US. You need to have that travel insurance because you just never know what could happen.
Okay, so you've purchased your travel insurance. You're now at your vacation. What happens if there's a travel advisory or some other thing, a curveball that comes at you?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question because I think oftentimes people are at destination when things are happening, But the biggest thing to know is, what are you covered for in that particular moment? What travel advisories exist in that current moment? Because really it depends on when those travel advisories were put into place and when you purchased that policy. So be very clear on what you're purchasing today, be clear on what is covered for you, and be extra clear on how those travel advisories may impact your travel.
Well, and how about your vaccine status? Can you even get travel insurance without being vaccinated?
You can, yes. There are products out there that are that base their benefits off of your vaccine status. So if you don't have the vaccinations, you may have a lower policy maximum that you'd be covered for. Whereas if you're fully vaccinated, there's higher policy maximums that exist for you. So it really does depend on the product that you're purchasing. Some products don't cover COVID at all. So you just need to make sure that when you're going to your destination, that you're covered for everything that could possibly happen.
That's an interesting point. Probably one of the reasons why many people are choosing to get vaccinated as they head into the winter season. They're thinking about snowbirding. But what happens if, say, you are away and you're required to quarantine for some reason? So whether you test positive or what have you, or maybe you've come into contact with somebody who's tested positive and suddenly you can't travel anymore. Are you covered for that?
Great question. And again, there are products out there that will cover you for quarantine. They will provide a maximum benefit throughout the day, even for meal expenses and accommodations if you have to stay for a little bit longer. But again, there are other products that simply don't have that coverage. So it's so important that you do read that fine print, looking for that quarantine, looking for the COVID section, especially, to read that full and ensure that, you know, every coverage that you could possibly think of that you might need, that you don't want to be, you know, stuck with, is covered for you.
I guess the question, you know, I mentioned it in the beginning, and I think a lot of people think I am covered because my credit card covers me, and they may not know all the fine print, and I know you've mentioned it a lot, but what advice do you have for that individual who thinks, I'm covered, my Amex covers me, my MasterCard covers me, I don't need travel insurance because I'm already covered?
Yes, and that's definitely something that comes up with a lot of our insurance partners. We get this question from a lot of people, and quite frankly, it comes down to the fine print again. What does your travel what are your travel benefits on your credit card? Take a look at that book, and if you don't have the book, go to the bank's websites and really take a look at the certificate to identify, yes, they may sell you on it has travel benefits, but you may later find out that there may not be trip interruption benefits, there may not be trip cancellation benefits, or there may not be baggage benefits. There's one little coverage, and they're saying, yes, there's travel benefits, which they're not wrong. It's just, you know, it's a selling point rather than being adequately covered.
Okay, well, before I let you go, this is a question we get a lot, and it's about testing, but for travel. So what are those requirements as they stand today?
Yeah, that's one where I think if you've heard anything, is to really take a look at what the climate is today in the countries that you're going to, including the country you're leaving from. You know, you guys mentioned it earlier. A rapid antigen is acceptable to enter the US, but it's not acceptable to come back into Canada. So all of those variances and nuances, you have to go to the government websites, you know, take a look at, you know, what that particular country requires you to do when you get there. And it's so important that you do that, because the worst thing that you want to have happen is you get all the way to your destination, you're in that customs checkpoint, and they say, oh, you didn't bring X, Y, or Z, or you don't have that, and then be turned away. So be sure you do your research. I can't explain that enough. Do your research, because things could be different tomorrow.
Umesh, thank you so much for this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The fact that going to the US, you needed an antigen test, but coming back, you needed a PCR test, a much more expensive test. And I just wondered if one test was more effective at detecting COVID than the other. Like, why the difference?
Welcome back. Let's check in with our live remote audience for some of their questions now. And we'll start with you, Linda. Welcome to the panel.
My question related to the fact that going to the US, you needed an antigen test, but coming back, you needed a PCR test, a much more expensive test. And I just wondered if one test was more effective at detecting COVID than the other? Like, why the difference?
Well, I just had that experience recently, Lynette. The antigen test is a very rapid test. It takes about 15 minutes and it is a bit more superficial. The results are pretty accurate. The government of the United States, they accept it. So it's all good to go and it's much less expensive. But the PCR test, depending on where you go, again, this is why research is important. And if you can get online, I would check the destination. Some places, for example, New York City, they have mobile clinics all over the city, and they are free for a PCR test. It is much more involved, a little more invasive if you haven't had the test before, but it also takes longer to get the results. And I think that's really important to know, is depending on timing, that's really important. You've got to do the math before you leave Canada and when you come back, because it's a 72-hour window. But it is more effective, according to experts here in Canada, in detecting any sort of infection or any sort of COVID infection.
Thank you, Lynette. The next question is from Dan. Hey, Dan.
I'm a travel writer and a travel photographer, and I have inquired recently of 4 different travel insurers about travel insurance for COVID. And they've all replied that my travel insurance will cover me for COVID-related issues once I'm in the country I'm going to, but will not cover trip cancellation insurance if I have to cancel my trip for any COVID-related reason before I leave for my trip. And I'm wondering if anybody has any suggestions on what travel insurance company I could go to get insurance for trip cancellation.
Ron?
Yes. As a wholesaler, we're provided a travel protection plan that covers COVID and COVID interruption. And also, it's a Part A and a Part B. So our Part A is the waiver, which anybody can change their mind 24 hours prior to departure and get a full cash refund. Throughout the last 17 months, Collette has given back $180 million in cash refund. We did the fiduciary responsibility. If we didn't render a travel service, we don't keep people's monies. And so what we have done under this full travel protection plan, trip delay, baggage, medical assistance, emergency, and if you were to test positive at destination or while on tour with us, that interruption would be covered for that travel writer.
Interesting, pretty comprehensive. All right, thanks, Dan. The next question comes from Deborah. Hey, Deborah.
My question is, I recently booked a cruise with Princess, which I've since canceled, but doing research, I discovered that the passengers are mandated to be vaccinated, except under 12, but crew members are not mandated. And I'm just questioning, why is that? It just doesn't seem right that crew members don't have to be vaccinated.
Yeah, seems a little bit backwards. Can anyone comment?
Well, just on our multi-day guided tours, from our tour directors, from our drivers, from hotel staff, vendors, they have to be fully vaccinated, and we require our guests to be fully vaccinated. So that's to be compliant and conform to the health and safety protocols in working with Collette. So I can't speak on behalf of the cruise lines, but what we do on our coach tours is that everybody who's in contact or dealings with our guests have to be fully vaccinated.
And I think, too, it depends on the destination. So many of the cruises leave from U.S. ports. So if Florida isn't mandating people in the hospitality industry or in the tourism industry to have their vaccines, the companies aren't necessarily mandating them as well. I think that's the thing to think about. And again, when you plug into your team with your travel advisor, and the cruise lines themselves all have 1-800 numbers. And I think it is a good reason to maybe think twice about going if you're not comfortable, and go somewhere else where the mandates are a bit maybe stricter. Because I don't think we should stop going. I just think we have to make better choices.
That's a great point. All right, when we come back, final thoughts from our panelists. That's next. Welcome back to theZoomer. It's time for final thoughts from our panelists. So we'll start with Sandra. Hey, Sandra.
We want to encourage people to get on the plane. You know, our job is to make things as safe and simple as possible. And we have just launched a brand new campaign. It's called the Green Button. The idea being that green is synonymous with the Emerald Isle, with Ireland, and also the word go. If you go onto our website right now, ireland.com, you'll see a lot of amazing travel deals from our partners like Collette Vacation and our airlines that have incredible travel deals. So there's really great value out there, and it's just time to start traveling again.
Barbara.
I understand the concerns that some people can have to travel again, but if you decide to do so, know that Spain is a safe destination, that all protocols are in place, and that the tourist industry is prepared to welcome you. And to keep updated about the restriction, the best is to verify your portal, travelsafe.spain.info.
Well, we can't wait to reconnect in the joy and love of travel. And we're very fortunate and blessed to have Vivian host 2 exciting tours next year. One to the Floriade, that's in Elmer, Amsterdam. And the other one will be a Tuscany Umbria, concentrating on 2 amazing regions in Italy. So, you know, if you want to go on to the Collette website, look at the Traveling Well experience, and just be sure that the health and safety is the first and foremost the priority of our guests. And we've put packages and protocols in place to assure you, to give you that reassurance in traveling.
Perfect. I think if you're still a bit nervous, it's time to dip your toe into the travel waters, whether it's just outside your own back door. I think Canada right now, especially holidays, seeing your friends and family who you've been away from is a really important thing, because we need those reasons to travel. Why are we going? And yes, please come with me next year to Holland and to Italy, because those are great reasons, especially if you're a gardener or if you are a foodie. So these reasons, again, talking about Ireland and Spain, they're great reasons to travel to those places, because there's so much in the destinations that enriches you.
Awesome. And Umesh.
Yeah, I mean, if you're ready to go, don't forget your travel insurance. Don't forget to understand your benefits. And if you're not fully sure of what benefits you have, you know, speak to a broker and take the time to do that and understand what's going on. You can find more information about the contact information for us at carptravelinsurance.ca.
Perfect. All right. Well, a big thank you to our live virtual audience, and of course to my panelists for all of your expertise and for being here. It was so great to have you. That's all the time we have. We'll see you soon. For now, it's time to zoom out.